Officer Kwiatkowski retired from the police force after he was suspended for choking another officer on the job, a separate incident of punching another officer when he was off the clock, and most recently, Kwiatkowski and two other officers were indicted on civil rights charges for holding down a black teenager and shooting him with a BB gun. As for Horne, the city has sent her case to the state retirement system for a review. We contacted them for an update, but we haven't heard back yet. Joanne.
And like she said, that officer, he was indicted with two other officers. Those two officers got off. And Gregory Kwiatkowski spent 4 months in jail, and also sued me for defamation, saying that I lied about him being abusive. $65,000 is what he got a default judgment for, because I did not know that I had court that day. And $20,000 he got, and now he's still coming after me now, after all of this, for $80,000. So when we were listening to Richard, I don't know your last name. Richard Jackson. When you were talking about the arbitration, it kind of triggered me, because during arbitration they did the very bare bones in representing me. I was fired twice. The first time that I was fired, I really don't get into that one, but the point is it was a injury from the job. So when I got fired, I basically fought them and won. And then when I did, they fought me back and won for a minute. And so when I was off, I just was thinking, no other officer should have to go through this. This is a lot. To be fired twice for not doing anything or doing the right thing. So I said, I need to figure out what to do. And I said, well, if it's a law, people can't break the law. The good officers can tell the bad officers, I'm not going to jail for you. And that is why I wrote Cariol's Law. And Cariol's Law is a proposal for legislation to have a mandatory statute on police bystander intervention. That means we would never have another George Floyd happen. Provide protection from retaliation. We would never have another Cariol Horne happen. Require external investigation and mandated reprimanding for abuse or misconduct, and create a required reportable registry. Because if we have a national registry, an officer can't go from Buffalo, New York to Cleveland, Ohio, or to California. So we need that national registry. So back in 2019, I was in a homeless shelter. I wasn't there because I drank, smoked, did drugs. I never did any of that. I was there because I had PTSD and did not realize that was what it was. I just knew that I was tired of fighting. I was tired of trying. I got a call from Terry Watson. He was the founder of Strategies for Justice, which is a speakers bureau in Pennsylvania, and he also works at Penn State. So he called me and he says, I've been trying to get in contact with you. And I said, I realize that you have for months. And he says, could you come out here and speak? He was having a symposium. And I basically didn't want to tell him that I was homeless at the time. So I basically just said, I don't mind. He said, and you can be paid for it. So I had been speaking, telling people the story for free. So when he said I could be paid for it, I was like, really? And he says, yeah. He says, I can probably get you $2,500. Is that good enough? And I took the phone away from my ear and looked at it. And I said, is it good enough? And that's when I told him, I'm in a homeless shelter right now. And I have no money. So $2,500 would really be great. So that's when I started speaking to him about the law that I had written. But I didn't know how to get it passed, because when you're going through PTSD, you can't think straight. Your thoughts are racing. And that happens a lot. That's why I was sitting there, I was listening, but also trying to make sure that I stayed on task when I told you this story. So he helped write Cariol's law so that it could be presented, so that it could be passed as a law. And there's 6 sections to it. The first one is the duty to intervene when officers pose imminent threat to citizens. Of course, that's what I did, and that's what I was fired over, but like I said, I didn't want it to happen to another officer, so that is why I thought that was important. The second one is accountability for officers neglecting to intervene. Just like in the George Floyd case, we saw why that matters. Protection for officers who do intervene. I didn't want any other officer to be fired like I had been. Accountability for falsifying reports. Boy, did they lie, let me tell you. When the news story came out and it said that I jumped on Gregory Kwiatkowski's back, and then I turned around and I pushed this other officer, it's like, me reading that, I was like, wow, I must have had an S on my chest, because how could I do all of that? And how could somebody believe it, that I can jump on someone's back when we are face to face with the person between us? So I felt like a superhero. I became a superhero, I guess, by writing this law. But anyway, they lied, and Gregory Kwiatkowski was promoted. And that's when it really became an issue for me, because I said, I could be fired and he can be promoted. Well, anyway, section 5 is accountability for officers neglecting to, that's section 5 is impacts the policy regarding termination and departmental funding. That is important, because if the department lets it go on, then they should not have the funding. They should not be actually, we do have to change policing as the way it is right now. But that is something that all of the police departments want. They want that money. And the way they're getting the money is by using people as a commodity, which is wrong. And we need to basically stop all of that. Section 6 is restorative justice, which is what helped me get my pension for the retaliation of whistleblowers. Gary says I'm an intervener. He says, you're different, Cariol. You're an intervener. You have people that will speak up about it, but you actually did something. And this was in 2006 when it wasn't popular. But that law helped me to get my pension. And when the judge decided that, he would overturn the decision to fire me, he quoted the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, the time is always right to do right. The city of Buffalo has recognized the error and has acknowledged the need to undo an unjust from the past. The legal system can at the very least be a mechanism to help justice prevail, even if belatedly. While the Eric Gardners and George Floyds of the world never had a chance for a do-over, at least here the correction can be done. It is therefore the decision of the court as follows. The petitioner, original motion to vacate the decision of this court dated July 26, 2010, and the order and judgment thereof dated August 4, 2010 is granted. The findings and recommendations of the hearing officers are hereby annulled. When we talk about these arbitration hearings, this is really important. The termination of the petitioner as a City of Buffalo police officer based upon such findings and recommendation is hereby vacated, and the petitioner's amended motion for a cause of action under the newly enacted city charter provision is likewise granted. The court finds the petitioner will have been physically capable of performing her duties during the time period for which she is seeking relief, and the petitioner is therefore reinstated as a police officer within the City of Buffalo, non-pro-tunc, for the period of July 26, 2008 through August 4th, 2010, which is when I could retire. I am still waiting to get a check, but I am and quotes, officially retired as a police officer. That'll mean more when I get a check. But I am thankful, always thankful. And then in 2021, the Kathy Hochul, she's our governor. She basically, I'll just read it, okay? Horne was fired on arbitration recommendation after an incident in 2006 where she says she stepped in to stop a fellow officer putting a man in a chokehold. It wasn't until 2021 when the New York State Supreme Court Judge Dennis Ward vacated her firing, saying, to her credit, Officer Horne did not merely stand by, but instead sought to intervene despite the penalty she ultimately paid for doing so. New York owes Cariol Horne a debt of gratitude for her service to the Buffalo community and for her bravery in a moment of crisis, Governor Hochul said in a statement on Thursday. I am proud to sign this law, which will correct a longstanding injustice and ensure that Officer Horne is treated with the dignity and respect she deserves. The city of Buffalo was previously ordered to give Horne back pay and pension contributions back to 2010. Still waiting on that check. I was speaking to Geneva Reed. Geneva Reed is Sandra Bland's mom. I actually bought her obituary. I forgot. I left it over there. But she said that she went to her grave just last week. Matter of fact, no, it wasn't even last week. It was a few days ago. And when she went there, she said that there was change on her grave. And when she explained to me that, because I was thinking, why would somebody put change on her grave? She says, because Sandy made a change in this world. And so we were talking about all the work that we still have to do. And I was like, well, we have to make changes. There's things that we still have to do. And I said, well, when I go speak, I said, Sandy can speak through me. Because she had a YouTube channel where she says Sandy speaks. So I told her I will bring her with me, and I will make sure that she can speak through me. Because the system is making money from our bodies through jail, the hospital, also mental health. That is something that is real big now. In Buffalo, we just had someone that was shot by the police within the last week who had a mental health crisis. In the video, it was a video, he was coming at the police officers with a knife. But I said, well, if someone is scared of spiders, you don't put them in a room with spiders. So I'm not sure if the police triggered him. As far as the shooting, I think that it was justified because he was coming at the officers with the knife. But I think that we need to change how policing is, how it's done. And we need to deal with mental illness differently. Because if you're sending police officers to deal with someone who has an issue with police officers, then it's only going to trigger them. And if the only solution is to put them in jail, because now charges are pending against that person who had the mental health crisis, then I think that, as a nation, we need to change the way we have our thinking. So I just want to have a candid conversation, not worrying about this mic or the video or whatever, because I'm sure that we have solutions that we can talk about right now and implement them from this day forward. But before I do that, I'll let you play that video. This is a video for a national call for Cariol's Law. And I do have Cariol's Law bracelets. Now, I'm not selling them, but donations are welcome. Drea is a local artist. She and Dr. Rami Nashashibi from Chicago made this video.
Little Mahmoud on his way to school. Uzi submachine gun, boy don't you move. Threw off his pack, slipped on the cracks. Hands in the air, bullet in his back. Mama, please, I can't breathe. Get these demons off of me. Got the knee on my neck, I'm on the ledge. Baby, come home, don't feel that dead. Boys to the leaves, dogs off the leash. Maria begging, don't take my Louise. Cold and afraid, kid in her cage, gripping the sky, praying to be saved. She's crying, I can't breathe. Ooh, I'm the day I'm on the legs. Hurry, go on. Oh, oh.
Chose these parents. They turned me into an automatic. They got a knee on her neck. I got a foot on the neck. They gotta deal with it death. They gotta cut us some checks. For me on this law, and carry this law. I dare you to draw, my every is raw. Niggas can dream on from me on the beyond. They must have forgotten everything we on. We can't be sorry. I leave around me. City with dreams while I'm busy with Dolly. Want me to suffer and scream for my mommy. They must have forgotten everything I be. I'm a descendant of slavery. I'm a descendant of trauma. I'm a descendant of shambles. That's my mama, 400 years. That's our trauma, millions of tears. That's my mama, 400 years. That's our trauma, feeling the fears. That's my mama, 400 years. That's our trauma, feeling despair. That's my mama, 400 years. That's our trauma, children's repair. That's our mama. Please, I can't breathe. Can't think secrets of me. They got their knee on my neck. We're on the ledge. Please come on, don't feel it. Mama, please, I can't breathe. Can't think secrets of me. They got their knee on my neck. We're on the ledge. Please come on, don't feel it. Mama, please, I can't breathe. Can't these demons off of me? They got their knee on your neck. We're on the edge. Come on, man, don't be the dead.
All right, do you have any questions? Oh, before we do that, I want to say who helped me. Harvard Law, Dr. Intisar Rapp, and Ronald Sullivan, at Kirkland and Ellis, Neil Eggleston, Sarahi Constantine Padilla, and Cameron Bajwa. Those are the attorneys that helped me to get my pension. So now I need everyone here to take one of those, or all 6 of them, you can take all 6 of them, one of those sections, all 6 of the sections, and get it passed in your city, state. Help me pass it nationally. I can really appreciate that. Any questions? I know I didn't answer everybody's question, right? Go ahead, Ms. Pat. Oh, okay.
Thank you so much, Carol, for joining us here today. I was wondering if you could talk about Derek Chauvin and George Floyd for a moment, and what you would have done had you been there today, or if Cariol's law existed in Minnesota, how would you want those brand new officers to have responded to what that officer was doing? And would that be part of their training? Because part of the issue was they claimed, they were brand new on the job that day, or pretty close to it, and they didn't want to interfere with this veteran officer.
Well, the first training you get is home training. The thing about it is we don't know what they're learning at home. So, as far as the police department, I was told that if I see officers fighting, to get my little foot and kick 2. I didn't think that that was right. I mean, I understood it because that's what my mother said, not in those words, but if I saw my sister or cousins fighting, that we couldn't just leave them there. So I understood, but if we're supposed to be professionals and we had such awesome training, why would I have to get my little foot and kick 2? So that never sat right with me. And as I got on the police department, there were a lot of things that were not right. As far as Derek Chauvin and the other officers, they were adults who had training and they should have had common sense. So they should have stopped. I mean, it was 9 minutes and 26 seconds. Like, at what point does common sense kick in? So because it didn't kick in, then they should have been charged and they should have been found guilty like they were. But if I was there, I'm sure that I would have stopped it. And I actually think that, I'm not sure what Minnesota law is. Somebody here from Minnesota, they can tell me. But in New York State, you can come to the aid of a third person. So I'm not sure. It doesn't specify a police officer, or could a citizen come against a police officer. But if I am bound by that law, then the police officers should also be bound by that same law.
What I would like to say, I think we all should give Carol a hand for standing her grounds.
That is my godmom, so she's going to.
So I met Carol during her case. I didn't know her. And so when she got ready to go to court, the hearings and things, they denied the community to come and sit in and on it, but she fought for us to come in and demand it, and it happened. We were able to come and support her. So, and like she said, her law is, she's not anti-police. It's just for, her law is supposed to support the good police officers and protect them. And a lot of us in Buffalo support Carol. And we believe in what she's doing. So you're always gonna have the naysayers, but majority of the people, they believe in what she's saying. Like she said, she's been traveling around. I've been hanging whenever I can, a senior citizen, hanging when she can. But I love to support her, and I believe in what she's doing, and I pray to God she keep the strength to keep doing what she's doing.
And I thank Ms. Pat for always being there. Ms. Pat drives me nuts, everybody, but she keeps me on my toes. And as far as the naysayers, I don't worry about the naysayers. I'm just only worried about who has the same goal and wants to move forward.
So I think we've had this distinction throughout this conversation about good cops versus bad cops, and there being both of them in this police force. Do you think the culture within the police departments across the nation, and specifically in New York because you're there, does the culture prevent the fostering of good cops to want to come to the police force and stay on the police force, and then when they are there, giving them the ability to intervene like you did? Does the culture foster that type of ability for police officers, good ones, to intervene? Now, I would say.
Well, that is one reason for the law, so that the good officers can weed out the bad officers. Like Ms. Pat said, I am not anti-police. I do believe that there should be some changes in the police department, and I am for defunding the police. And that is not to say, I want the police to go out there with, not equipped for a situation where their life may be in danger. What I am saying is that there should be more money in the community. If there is for example, in Buffalo, it's around $141 million for the police department and $4 million for all of the community centers. I don't think that's right, because the community centers are centered in the community, and that's where people should be able to go and get some help. So I think some of that money should be filtered through the community centers. Somebody else had their hand up.
You didn't condemn the Buffalo police for killing the man with the knife. How do you feel about the Rochester police who answered a call for a mental health situation? And I think the deceased name was Prune, Mr. Prune.
Prude.
Was outside naked, and all they could do was put a bag over his head, and they weren't prosecuted or, as far as I know, disciplined by the Rochester police just down the road. What do you think about that?
Well, in the case that happened about a week ago, I don't know all of the specifics, and he didn't die. So, no, I can't really give an informed opinion. That is pretty much why I didn't condemn them. But from looking at the video, it looked justified from the way that it happened, with the guy coming towards them with the knife. But as far as the background information before the cameras came on, I don't know what that situation was. So I can't speak on that. As far as Daniel Prude in Rochester, I think that was horrible, the way that he was treated. I think it's horrible the way someone who is just driving down the street and gets pulled over for a headlight, Sandra Bland, for instance. I think it's horrible how they are treated. And, I try to get people to understand how one police officer initiated arrest feeds the whole justice system. It's like if I pull you over and stop you, lock you up for whatever reason, then you're gonna have the judges, the lawyers, the staff, the parole, probation, all of these officers are going to be correction officers because the end goal is prison, of course, to fill those. But all of these people are going to feed off of one person going through the justice system. So a lot of things need to be changed. And as far as police officers getting paid to go to court, I think that should just be part of their job. And I think you would see arrests go down a lot if they're not being compensated.
Thank you so much for being here. So I asked the previous panelist about the culture, the toxic culture of policing and the anti-blackness and sort of policing evolving from slave patrols, so that it's always been about controlling and harming black bodies. I'm wondering if you could talk to what it's like for a black police officer to be in that culture, to be in the culture of a sort of anti-black policing and harming black bodies sort of evolution, and whether you think black police officers can combat it through the inside, through like sort of being a part of a toxic culture and trying to change it.
It feels foreign. It feels like something that I didn't experience growing up. To be somewhere where you're not wanted, but you got there in a justifiable way, and then they want you to sit and watch people be abused, and you not say anything about it. For a long time, I didn't say anything about it because I couldn't. One time I was sitting in the patrol car, and there were some white officers beating on a black man, hitting him in the head with a flashlight because he supposedly had robbed a white woman at an ATM. And as they were beating him, he kept saying, I didn't do it, I know my rights. Well, I didn't know whether he did it or not, but I knew that he shouldn't have been beat like he was being beat because, you know, if you get hit in the head with a flashlight, you can die. So I sat there and I said, if they hit him one more time, I'm gonna stop him. And this was early on in my career. And they hit him one more time, 2 more times, 3 more times, they kept hitting him. And I just froze because I was saying, well, after I stop them, then who do I tell? There's nowhere I could go. So all of that, I mean, there were a lot of things that went on in the police department that were not right, and I couldn't do anything about it. So at the point where I did do something about it, I got fired. So it was all justifiable that I couldn't do anything, or I felt that I couldn't do anything. It was after being fired that I figured out what to do. But the environment, working on the inside, it was kind of impossible to do. And especially when they promote people who do things, who do abuse people. Any more questions? Right here. And if you feel like I'm not answering something correctly, hold my feet to the fire, because I can really get fiery for real.
So I have a question about whether you think that your law that was passed will encourage officers to apply to the police academy who might have been deterred by the culture on the police force. If now having that protection, if they intervene, if you think that will change the makeup of the police force?
Well, you have more officers who are like, more black officers, I should say, that came on in the 80s, who are now retired, who are willing to speak up. But, you know, some of them were not willing to give up their checks before. I mean, I didn't think I was giving up mine, but, you know, I did. So now they're more willing to speak. So you have more people who will speak up for them. So I think that if someone comes on the police department now and they have those issues, they have people they can go to.
First of all, I have to thank you. I don't think I did a sufficient job of thanking you for answering my call, right? You didn't know who I was or what I was asking for, and I'm just really grateful that you decided to join us. I know I said I was grateful, but I don't think I said thank you to you. The other thing, I'm hoping you might put a little, you said we could hold your feet to the fire, so I'm going.
Yes, you can.
I'm wondering if you could put maybe a little bit of a finer point on sort of your support for policing in America, right? So you said you believe in policing. And I do understand the very sophisticated nature with which you said, like, decreasing the resources for police, right, which is a way of defunding, right? Doesn't mean abolishing, but it is a way of defunding and putting the money where it needs to be. But I'm wondering, in light of the experience that you had as a black person, right, as a black woman in a police department, and you know what people like you are experiencing on a regular basis inside of police departments, how is it that we think policing is redeemable? And that really is a question that I would love to hear your thoughts on.
I think that it needs to be changed. As far as being redeemable, I mean, we have to deal with what we have right now, but I think that we definitely need to create policies, laws and policies for change. I don't think that it's going to keep working the way it's working now. I mean, I know it's not. You know, I think that, well, Cariol's law is a start. We can push that nationally. You have some good officers, some great officers, black and white. You have some bad black officers, and they need to go. So like I said, this is like sort of a bare bones. Cariol's law is bare bones. There still needs to be work on that. But I think that it's a start to help the officers get rid of weed out the bad ones. So right now, as far as a hard solution to change the culture, you can't change someone's heart. But what you can do is you can give more psychological exams rather than just one when you first get on the job. There needs to be mental health help. If there's a incident, like I said last week, there was an incident of a person being shot, and then you hear the officer. You can tell that he's disturbed by it, so he needs some help with his trauma, and that's a lot of things that officers are not getting. Help with their trauma. And, you know, you want to be tough. You want to say, oh, I can handle this, I can handle that. But some people can't handle it. And it should be mandatory that they get mental health help after an incident like that. Or whenever they feel like they need it. Or if someone else can point it out and say, I think that, you know, officer such and such really needs to see somebody, because sometimes they just don't want to go on their own.
I have two questions. The first question goes to, I'm sure the standards for becoming a police officer are different from those in Ohio, but I'll presume maybe the minimum education standard is a high school diploma, or maybe you could correct me. What is your opinion about increasing the minimum standards to become a police officer, whether it be education, the number of weeks you must complete in the police academy, and ongoing professional standards similar to how we have in law or medicine, that if you don't, you know, complete a certain amount of hours, you lose your license, or something of that nature. And then secondly, can you speak to this militarization culture? And I see it particularly for those who have served in the military, especially in direct combat, that they come back, maybe some of that mental health has not been addressed, and then they perceive the streets as being what they experience in their deployment and treating residents accordingly.
Okay. Well, as far as being a police officer, I think the requirement should be that you, first of all, know how to deal with people. Let's just take the gun away, the gun and all of the tools, the tasers, the gun, and because I didn't rely on my gun when I went out there. I relied on my greatest weapon, which I was always told was my brain. And if I go out there, well, some people will fight me on that one, but I think that if a person is genuinely invested in their community or the community that they work in, that they won't treat people any type of way, and they will be more willing to help. So I don't think it's a level of education. I think that it's a level of maturity that you should have. And I think that, like when I came on, I was 20 years old. I think that was a little too young. I think that it was okay for me, but for some people at 20 years old, I look at the 20-year-olds nowadays, which we were talking about last night. We were like, nah, I don't think I want them to police my area. But the point is, I think that there's a level of maturity, and if your brain is not fully developed till you're 25, then why are you on a police department handling a gun when you're younger? Even though you have some seasoned officers who are out there abusing people, they just need to be weeded out. But like I said, it's a level of maturity, not necessarily education, because you have a lot of educated fools. Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't think that they do act like it's a war zone, especially in any inner city in the USA. It seems like it's a war zone, and in a way it is. I don't agree with that. I think that officers should really rely on being a people person, relating to people, and then maybe you could get through to someone where I can't, so it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that me and the other person just doesn't connect. We don't connect. But as far as, all of the weaponry and more money into more weapons, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I do think that you do need certain things, and I don't believe that you need tanks and pretty much machine guns. I don't think you need all of that. And if you need that, you need to call in the military. You don't need to be doing that anyway on an everyday basis.
Well, would you guys please join me in thanking Ms. Horne for sharing her story?